In a quiet town nestled in the mountains of Japan stood an old, traditional house. It had been there for over a century, its tatami mats and sliding shoji doors a testament to its age. The house was owned by the Nakamura family, who had moved in just a few months prior. They loved the charm and character of the old house, despite its quirks. One rainy afternoon, while exploring the attic, young Aiko Nakamura stumbled upon an old, dusty trunk. Curious, she pried it open and discovered a beautifully crafted porcelain doll. Its delicate features were hauntingly lifelike, with glassy black eyes that seemed to follow her every move. The doll wore a faded kimono adorned with intricate patterns, and its hair was a cascade of ebony silk. Excited by her find, Aiko took the doll downstairs to show her parents. They admired the doll's craftsmanship, but felt an uneasy chill in the air. Dismissing it as a draft from the attic, they told Aiko she could keep the doll, provided she treated it with care. As the days passed, strange things began to happen. Aiko often heard soft whispers in the night, and the sound of tiny footsteps echoed through the house. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but the occurrences became more frequent and harder to ignore. She noticed that the doll, which she had named Hana, seemed to move on its own. It would be in a different position than she remembered, or even in a different room entirely. One night, Aiko woke to find Hana sitting at the foot of her futon, staring at her with those unblinking black eyes. Terrified, she ran to her parents' room, clutching the doll. Her parents, now equally alarmed by the strange events, decided to lock Hana back in the attic. Life returned to normal for a while until the sounds started again. Soft whispers, faint giggles, and the eerie feeling of being watched. The family could no longer ignore the sinister presence that had invaded their home. They decided to investigate the doll's origins, hoping to find some explanation for the haunting. Through old town records and conversations with longtime residents, they discovered a chilling history. The doll had once belonged to a woman named Akiko, a renowned doll collector who had lived in the house several decades ago. Akiko had a daughter, Haruka, who she loved dearly. However, Akiko's obsession with her dolls began to overshadow her care for her child. In a tragic and horrifying turn of events, Akiko, driven by madness, drowned Haruka in a nearby river, believing that her daughter's spirit would be preserved in one of her beloved dolls. The doll, it seemed, had become a vessel for Haruka's restless soul, trapped by her mother's deranged act. Desperate to rid their home of the malevolent spirit, the Nakamuras sought the help of a local priest. The priest performed a cleansing ritual and advised them to bury the doll far from the house. That night they drove to a remote wooded area and buried Hana deep in the ground, hoping to put Haruka's spirit to rest. For a time, peace returned to the Nakamura home. The whispers ceased, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. But late one night, Aiko awoke to a familiar sound, the faint giggle of a child. Trembling, she looked toward the attic door, which now stood slightly ajar. She knew with a sinking feeling of dread that Hana had returned. The next morning, the family found the doll sitting on the tatami mat in the living room, its glassy black eyes staring straight ahead, a faint smile playing on its lips. They realized with horror that they could never truly escape the spirit that haunted their home. From that day on, the Nakamuras lived in constant fear, knowing that the doll in the attic would never let them go. Days turned into weeks, and the haunting only intensified. Aiko's parents, Kenji and Yuki, began experiencing terrifying visions. Yuki would see the shadow of a young girl in the mirror, her reflection showing Haruka's sorrowful eyes. Kenji felt an icy hand grip his shoulder when he was alone, a chilling reminder of Haruka's presence. Determined to uncover more about the doll's dark history, Kenji visited the local library and spoke to elderly residents who had known Akiko. He learned that Akiko had been part of an underground occult group that believed in soul transference. This group believed that by performing a series of rituals, they could trap a person's soul within an object, allowing them to live on forever. Akiko's doll collection was rumored to be filled with the souls of those who had met untimely deaths. As Kenji delved deeper into Akiko's past, he discovered that she had been shunned by the community after Haruka's death. Her husband had left her, unable to cope with the loss and Akiko's increasing madness. Alone and consumed by her obsession, Akiko continued to perform her dark rituals until her own mysterious disappearance. Some said she had finally succeeded in transferring her own soul into one of the dolls. With this new information, the Nakamuras knew they needed stronger help. They contacted a famous exorcist, known for dealing with powerful spirits. The exorcist, a stern woman named Takara, agreed to help, warning them that the ritual to banish Haruka's spirit would be dangerous. On the night of the ritual, the house was filled with an oppressive energy. Takara set up a circle of protection in the living room, surrounding the doll with sacred symbols and incense. She chanted ancient prayers, calling upon the spirits to release Haruka and let her soul find peace. As the ritual progressed, the house began to tremble. The whispers grew louder, turning into agonized cries. The temperature dropped, and the air became thick with a malevolent presence. Takara's voice grew more urgent, her chants rising to a crescendo. Suddenly, the room was filled with a blinding light. Aiko saw a vision of a young girl, Haruka, smiling sadly at her. Haruka whispered a soft, "Thank you," before vanishing into the light. The oppressive energy lifted, replaced by a calm silence. Exhausted but relieved, the Nakamuras watched as Takara carefully wrapped the doll in sacred cloth. She explained that Hana would be taken to a remote shrine where powerful rituals would ensure the spirit could never return. The Nakamura family slowly returned to their normal lives. The house, once filled with fear and despair, felt warm and welcoming again. But Aiko could never forget the tragic story of Haruka and the chilling events that had unfolded. She often visited the shrine where Hana was kept, leaving offerings and prayers for Haruka's soul. Years later, the story of the haunted doll became a local legend, a cautionary tale told to children to keep them away from the old, abandoned houses. The Nakamuras moved away, seeking a fresh start, but the memory of Hana remained with them, a reminder of the thin line between the living and the dead. And in the quiet town, nestled in the mountains, the old house stood as a silent witness to the dark secrets it had once harbored, its tatami mats and sliding shoji doors now at peace, with no whispers or giggles to disturb the night.